Yes, it may. I mean, it definitely may have. Mr. Mack was my mentor in high school and in life. Like, we've stayed friends, and he was very much, schools should not be big; they should be small. There should be a small community that the students can go to, and he was the director of this kind of small community, and he really believed that whatever the students' dream was, they should be able to pursue that, and that every child was worthy of doing that, that not every child had to fit into a 7-period-a-day schedule. Like, for example, when I was in high school, I volunteered at elementary school in the mornings and then took a few classes at Quincy High in the afternoon and a couple of classes at Harvard Extension in the evening. And there were all kinds of kids, from kids that were about to drop out, that he would give them a different way to do it so they could stay in school, to kids that just had special, needs, or just whatever kind of kid it was, he would help you make the school a more personal place for you. So, yeah, I do really value that model. I find as a classroom teacher that it's harder. Like, you can't, in a classroom, like, your job is to teach a lesson, and you can't, it's not like having a center that you can counsel kids and stuff, and there's not a lot of funding for that in the schools. So
it's difficult because you're working in an institution, and an institution has its own set of objectives and rules, and et cetera, but within the institution, you want to find time to do what Mr. Mack did for you, or your mother did for you. And I find kind of an interesting interplay here in terms of how your mother, as parent, as mom, treated you very differently than other children were treated by their parents. And here you are in Quincy, in this school within a school, and this Mr. Mack is treating you and other kids, trying to find the individual. And then in a public school in Boston, it's not easy to do that.
Yeah, and I think that most educators, like the ones I work with, are wonderful, and they would want to have that, and it's to have that interplay with kids, treating them more like individuals. But because of the institutional structure and the lack of funding, and it's difficult. It's a fight that I think we fight every day. And I also think sometimes with the kids, it's hard to teach high school, and when they come to me, I think they're used to listening to that authority or not listening to it. So, it's like they want to hear what the rules are. They want to have it be more firm. So you can't just say, well, I'll reason with you. Right. It's very, there's a lot of different issues going on.
You have a chapter here in the book, too, getting back to kind of a sequence I have here, but just in the short amount of time we have, at least for today, naming. Your mother named you originally Lauralee, but then over some period of time she decided that, there's a better name for you. And tell me again, was it when you were 12 or 13 you decided to change your name again?
Yes.
What was that process like? Taking charge of who you were to say, this is not right, this name doesn't fit.
That was, again, something I think I learned from my mom, because she grew up in Oregon.
Yeah.
Okay, and she grew up Betty Jean, and she always wanted, like, a more proper name. Okay. And so she changed her name to Elizabeth after she got divorced, when I was young. So, and she chose our last name for us, which is Summer, from a song that is called "The Summer Place" for the two of us. I think by Andy Williams.
Yes.
Sure, but
Summer, I could sing the song now. I would.
Yeah, it goes "Summer Place" just for the two of us, and my mom wanted just the two of us to have that name because she didn't want to have her maiden name, because she wasn't a maiden anymore. She didn't want to have her ex-husband's name. I didn't have my father's name because she wasn't with my father, so she picked a name for just us. And so I think that influenced me to kind of change my name a little bit when I was 12 or 13.
Right. Again, to me, it's another example of that relationship with you and your mother, that over some period of time and years, different things were happening, in the ways in which either one of you would take charge of an event in your life and construct and reconstruct, and you continue to do that. Again, we're running out of time I'd like to spend with you. We'll continue this conversation another time. But one last thing for today would be this, the idea of home. I mentioned earlier that homeless is a hard term to come to grips with. But then if you put that aside and say, well, what is home all about? You mentioned this just, again, for the viewers, for the readers. I came to realize that home was not a place. And you were thinking and saying, I looked up at my mother and thought to myself that home could perhaps be a person. Is that something that still resonates with you today?
Yes, definitely. And I think I came upon that reflection when I was writing the book more than, it may have been something I just knew as a child, but to articulate it, I knew I was writing this book about being homeless, and you know, I thought about what is the constant, what is home? It's something that keeps you safe and secure, and you feel good there. You feel like yourself. And I was thinking that is my mom. Yeah, that's my home. So that was a neat moment for me to kind of realize that. Yeah.
There's a book by, again, without getting into it, without taking much time, but Anna Quindlen wrote a book a few years back, a piece of fiction, about a story where a teenage couple give up their baby and drop it off in the middle of the night at some place. And this man, who's a handyman, a young man in his early 20s, decides to parent this child. And he said that, what's a mother? And he said, now here is a young man who's all of a sudden trying to raise this child, dropped on his doorstep, and he says, a mother is one person who walks this child, you know, in the middle of the night and comforts and does all the things that parents do, but how do you define it biologically? And there's many ways to define situations differently.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
Well, we have so much to talk about. We'll have to do it again.
Definitely.
So, Lauralee, thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's a tremendous piece of writing, and I hope people will appreciate it.